Hello, and welcome to Speaking Out on Financial Abuse. Stories of survival and hope after financial abuse in a marriage or romantic partnership. I'm your host, Lori G. And are you thinking of divorce but afraid to go further because you fear you're going to lose your shirt and your sanity over an indefinite period of time? Our guest today has another option for divorce that might save you a ton of money and years of legal agony. Today, I'm excited to welcome divorce mediator Joe Dillon. Joe is co-founder with his wife, Cheryl, of a full-service divorce mediation and coaching business that serves a wide portion of the United States. Joe is going to tell you how to get out without losing your mind and without losing your future. Joe, welcome to the program.
Hi, Lori. Thanks for having me.
So where in the world are you now, and where are you originally from?
Well, right now I am in Southern California in the San Diego area. And like the old song goes, it never rains in Southern California, but here we are in the middle of July and it is pouring. And so it's very odd because we stop getting rain usually in May, and it doesn't kick in until about December. I'm originally from the New York City area, from northern New Jersey, and with a stop in Chicago along the way. So definitely have gone coast to coast, and it's been interesting, seeing the country and getting to know the people and experiencing a lot of different cultures. I can tell you all the stereotypes about Southern California are definitely true. People love to surf. Everybody's very laid back. It's all about the beach. And being originally a native New Yorker, it's all about go, go, go.
I would say, what are the stereotypes for New York?
Yeah. So, right. But New Yorkers it's funny with New Yorkers, I like to say they're violently friendly. It's like they're very aggressively friendly, right? They'll drop what they're doing to help you, but they'll scream at you about it the entire time.
That's so funny. I can relate.
Seem to avoid you. They will cross the street. Yeah. They will cross the street to avoid you out here. They're way non-confrontational. So,
yeah, well, we have to see each other physically on the street all the time in New York. I think it's different. We're so much in proximity of each other. We're in California. It's like you're in a car all the time.
All the time. Yep. No public transit, which is maddening.
So what was money like growing up in your own household? What was your childhood like?
My parents were pretty cooperative when they were married, right? So I'm a child of a litigated divorce. And, my dad worked in construction, so he got paid every Friday and take his check to the bank and they'd cash it and they'd sit down at the table Saturday morning. And I remember they had this system where they had these envelopes. They put money for the electric and for the water and for the mortgage. And so they did work together very well. But then as I got a little older, I think it was probably about 11 or so, then things started falling apart with my parents. And so my dad, he started perhaps going out more, buying things. My mom wasn't working outside the home. She was busy raising me. And then when she saw that, she got a part-time job because she was wondering, hey, maybe something's going on. And then, they litigated their divorce, right? So at that point, then it became a really drawn out, long, contentious battle. And one of the things I remember as a kid, now I was in high school when the divorce finally settled out, is that one day the alimony checks just stopped coming. So my dad, I guess, just decided, hey, I've had enough of this, right? And I want to spend this money elsewhere. I came to learn that he actually was getting remarried. But it turns out they had both spent a lot of money on the divorce. And my mom just didn't have the money or probably even the emotional bandwidth, but definitely the financial bandwidth to go back after him and get the alimony agreement enforced. So in a way, that's kind of a form of financial abuse. You take this legally binding agreement that's been bestowed upon you by the courts of New Jersey and the judge, and then you just decide to ignore it. And then you're counting on the other person not being able to enforce it. And that's pretty much what happened. And then that's kind of where my mom started working multiple jobs. And, I was starting to get into that place where I was a junior, senior in high school and going to become college time. And so that's really what I saw. So it was unfortunate because they went from being very cooperative to very antagonistic. So that was an unfortunately powerful message that things can change even on the blink of an eye.
Well, that's a really good point that when you say litigated divorce, you mean using attorneys and going to court for the divorce as opposed to using a mediator. Well, where you have one partner who goes out and hires $1 million divorce attorney, and then you have the other partner who, as you said, can find themselves needing to also hire an attorney, but they don't have that joint income anymore, or they don't have the individual personal means to hire an attorney. So you end up with kind of lopsided attorney attorney power when it comes to a divorce? It's whoever could hire the most expensive lawyer?
So some attorneys, right, as you imagine in my line of work, a lot of my colleagues and friends are attorneys. And, there are some attorneys who are genuinely interested in settlement. They understand that, look, an attorney has to fight for their client. They advocate for their client, right? That's their job, to get the person who hired me the best settlement. But the smart attorneys, in my opinion, understand that in order to get the best agreement for my client, I may also have to give some things to the other side that the other attorney wants to get the best agreement for their client.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you hope you're going to get those kinds of attorneys, but then you get I'm a big dog lover, right? So we rescue dogs. I love pit bulls, just as a general rule. I think the poor dogs are so misaligned. They are hilarious and adorable. And
is there a relation there between a legal person wanting to own pit bulls or no?
Yeah, right. Because it's funny. Everybody say, "Oh, get yourself a pit bull attorney," right? That promise you aggressive representation. And it's like, well,
we'll
okay,
chew the tar out of that other person.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, great. That person is going to go up one side of the person and down the other. And guess what? What's weird is that at the end of the day, what I've seen, and in my line of work, I've seen thousands of these kinds of cases. And what's interesting is settlements fall in certain ranges, right? You're really just arguing, nibbling at the margins. And what I find is that most people are really in disagreement over one or two major issues. People really tend to have a lot of agreement. It's just that their communication has been so dysfunctional over the course of their relationship that they have a very difficult time recognizing when they're in agreement. And so as a mediator, that's kind of my job, is to point that stuff out and say, let's not focus on all the stuff you disagree on. Let's focus on all the things that you do agree on and then build from there.
Well, what is the difference between hiring a divorce attorney and hiring a mediator?
So good question, right? The attorney, like I said, they're going to fight for their client and their client only. They're going to represent, advocate. They only are concerned about that one person's interests. Whereas as a mediator, I'm concerned about both parties and their kids, right? I advocate for both of them and their children when applicable. I want the family unit or the detached couple to have the best agreement, not the husband or not just the wife. I want them to collectively have the best agreement. And so when I go in that way, I try to explain to them, look, I work for both of you, acknowledging that in order to come to agreement, you're going to have to both give and get. So if you want to get something, you've got to be able to offer something in return, right?
Yeah.
With the attorneys, it's, I want to get something, but I'm not going to give anything in return. And that really just kind of grinds people and grinds and grinds and grinds. So when I think about as a mediator, I know attorneys, of course, are very focused on the law, getting what the statutes say and all that stuff. So their thinking tends to be very much in the box, very linear, and they're just concerned about the settlement. As a mediator, I tend to be outside the box. I try to be creative. I try to come up with settlement agreements that work for the couple, that are unique, that fit their own unique profile. So I'm concerned about not only their agreement, how they get there, but also their emotional well-being.
Yeah.
Because I know from seeing my parents, litigated divorces will destroy you. They just drag on for years. They destroy your nervous system. It's bad enough your marriage is ending. Now you have to go through another 2 to 3 years of hell in order to end this thing. Like, we decided we wanted a divorce 3 years ago. Why isn't this over, right? Mediation takes a few months and it helps you move on with your lives. And so I really try to pay acute attention to getting an agreement that's customized, balancing the playing field. So if I see one party perhaps is maybe a little financially illiterate or at a disadvantage, I try and help them understand what it is they need, educate them, ask them questions, engage them, explain to them. This way, the settlement is a little more, we can have a better constructive conversation, and then also support them emotionally. My partner, who's also my wife, Cheryl, she's a divorce coach. So she helps them with the emotional aspects, and I'm more of the financial and tactical guy. So that's how we kind of approach it as a team. So I think it's a pretty unique proposition, how we try to treat the whole client, not just the legal agreement and the settlement. Let's get to the numbers.
Well, in any divorce, there's resentment. You may have worked some things out because you've agreed that you are no longer going to be married. It sounds like what you're saying is that using an attorney going into a litigated divorce could really fuel resentment. And the job of you as a mediator is to defuse resentment and put it more in objective, practical, and really straight mathematical terms. I can imagine that must save a huge amount of money to use a mediator as opposed to an attorney.
Yeah, I mean, litigated divorces are hundreds hundreds of thousands of dollars. And people don't realize that's not going to happen to me. It's like, yes, it is. Because a lot of what happens is you're going to focus on those 2 or 3 issues that you never really it's sort of like saying, this is black. No, it's blue. This is black. No, it's blue. Like you're not getting anywhere, right? You're just digging in on your positions. And so as a mediator, we really focus on what we call interest-based negotiations. That's my forte. That's my background. That's the school of mediation and negotiation I come from, is say, let's get away from what we're trying to argue about or what we think the answer should be. What do you have an interest in doing? Well, I have an interest on agreeing what color that shirt is. Right? Let's forget about what color we think it is. Let's define the problem. What do I have an interest in? I have an interest in putting my kids through college. Great. Let's not spend a lot of money on your divorce. I have an interest in keeping the house. Great. Let's find something you can offer to the other side so that they'll be agreeable to let you keep the house. Those are the things that really, I think, help reframe the conversation and get people thinking about, yeah, you know what? It's not just a screaming match where, the loudest voice wins or the most expensive attorney wins or the one, last woman or last man standing, right? We're really trying to get you to understand that this is a cooperative process and you could spend thousands instead of hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah,
on your
or
divorce,
millions.
right? We even had a client who called us up. They had been litigating for 7 years. They had spent, I think, close to $800,000 on their divorce, and it still wasn't resolved. And I'm like, well, you guys, we'll give it a shot, but boy, oh boy, I don't know if after 7 years and $800,000, mediation is going to work for you.
Wow.
You obviously something preventing you from agreeing, right?
I want the dog. No, you can't have the dog.
Yeah, I had a case. It was the staple gun. It was a heavy duty one, the one with where you go ching, like staple gun. Yes. You're probably like, no, he doesn't mean staple gun. He means Maserati. No, I mean staple gun, literally staple gun. This is the final thing they're screaming at over. You're like, really? This is what, really? I will buy you both a staple gun. How about that? If we could just finish this now, right? Sometimes you walk out of your office and you're like, I can't believe that just happened, but it did. Okay, let's go get a cup of tea and move on.
But it makes sense to them. It makes sense to them. Absolutely.
Right. It sure does.
Well, this is such a crazy job and crazy career you and your wife have chosen. I could see it's fascinating. You meet a lot of very interesting people, but how did you become involved in this part of the legal field?
Yeah, so I'm not a lawyer by trade. My background, so I have an MBA in finance and a background in negotiation. And so, back when I was working corporations, I was working for publishing companies, and I was the director of sales administration in these organizations. And here's what would happen. So I had the sales department and the legal department reporting to me. So if you know anything about salespeople, they just want the sale. They only get paid their commission. And when that order is signed and those checks come in, please give me my money. So they'll give away the farm. They'll say, yeah, sure, give the customer whatever they want as long as I can get that commission. Now, the legal department has to prove all the settlements. And as you would imagine, the legal department doesn't want to give an inch. The legal department is like, well, we wrote this contract because it favors us and this and that, and you get nothing. Meanwhile, the poor customer who wants to give us money, and sometimes millions of dollars, these were large institutional subscriptions that these people would be wanting to buy from our company that I was working for at the time. They're like, listen, you guys, when you figure out your little internal squabble, you just let us know and we'll cut you the check for $3 million. So here I am now sitting in the middle of the customer, the attorneys, and the salespeople. And I'm trying to get all of them to agree to some terms because now the customer's like, well, wait a minute, maybe we need to get our legal department involved too. And so now I'm trying to mediate between everybody to get the sale to happen, to get the terms to be agreeable to the legal department for us and the client, for the salesperson to be happy and just kind of move this along. What I realized was I enjoyed the whole idea of helping multiple parties come to agreement. And so I went and took some coursework at Harvard University, and it was actually the Harvard program on negotiation, and it was taught by a couple of gentlemen who were considered rock stars in the field, Fisher and Rye. They wrote a very famous book called Getting to Yes. It's the modern treatise on interest-based negotiation. It's what I live, I breathe. It's what I strongly believe in. And so if anybody wants to really be bored out of their mind and read a great book, read Getting to Yes. And so that's the philosophy I took into it. And so then after some years in corporations with downsizing and buyouts and stuff like that, I was having lunch with my mother-in-law, and she said, you should be a mediator. I have a friend who is a mediator. She was actually a mediator for the police union in Jersey City, New Jersey. You see on TV where it's that late night contract. They're in the negotiations and drinking all the coffee, right? They're not leaving until the deal is done. And so I spoke to her and I said, wow, this is really interesting to be able to help people in conflict come to agreement. My background is finance and negotiation. Where could I do the most good? And I said, well, gee, my parents litigated their divorce. I have a numbers background. I'm going to focus exclusively on divorce mediation. And so that's what I did. I've been mediating 28 years. That was 17 years ago in private practice now. And really, when you think about divorce, you have child support, alimony, and property division. So 3 of the 4 issues are financial in nature. And even parenting plans are inputs into the calculation of child support in a lot of states. So 3.5 of them are financial in nature of the 4. And so my background really comes in handy. And, I just try to help people avoid what happened to me, right? I say, look, I am a kid of a litigated divorce. I literally had to go get a haircut, which as a teenage boy is devastating. And I had to put on a suit at 15 years old because I had to go sit in the back of the courtroom so that I looked nice and the judge would give us good child support. That is how I spent my teenage years in the lobby of the lawyer's office, in the, getting the mail. And I'm like, oh, crap, I got the mail. I see the return address. It's from my mom's lawyer. It's from my dad's lawyer. And you're just like, oh, man, I have to be the kid. I was an only child. So I'm the guy who walks in the house and hands my mom this letter. It's like, great. This is fantastic. That was basically my high school years. And so I am the walking billboard of what not to do. And so I'm really passionate about that. I really try to emphasize to people, look, don't be my parents. Mediate this. Don't litigate this thing. Put your kids first. Put your differences aside, save your money, save your emotional bandwidth, and focus on rebuilding your lives. So I take this very seriously, even though as you get to know me outside of mediation space, I'm kind of the class clown. Like I blow off steam. I need some levity to balance what it is I do, because I want to make sure when I show up for my clients that I'm there for them because they need me to be.
Well, it all does come down to money, especially how the divorce is going to affect children. It really comes down to money. I mean, yes, there's a lot of emotional factors and healing that has to happen, but even that depends on money. Are you going to take a vacation? Are you going to be able to get good counseling? All of this your medical care, that's a huge one. You must come across a lot of mediation is medical care.
Yeah.
Who's going to pay for the medical insurance, especially if there's retirement involved now? What are the most common things you tend to see a partner do to try to, if they're coming into a mediation, technically are supposed to have some agreement already that, that you're not going to use attorneys, but a partner can still hide a lot and attempt to hide a lot. What are some of the common things you see a partner do to maybe hide assets or income during divorce? And what kind of surprises tend to come out during a mediation for a divorcing couple?
A lot of it in mediation is centered around debt, actually, believe it or not. It's debt that has been
no surprise.
Yeah. And so one of the things that happens is that if you're spending money out of a joint bank account, someone's going to notice the balance goes down. But if you're amassing debt on a credit card that's only in your name and you grab the statement, or you use paperless statements now, right? And you don't even need to get something in the mail, the other party has no idea what you're doing. And so this is pretty common. There's a couple of these instances that we see, and some of them are I get a little heated about because they're like kind of soapbox issues for me. So I will do my best to temper. So one of them is that a lot of us have seen the rise of the internet millionaire or billionaire. So a lot of folks that come into our office, they're convinced, well, I got this great app, or I'm going to invest in this awesome startup, and it's going to make me a billionaire, and we're going to be in easy street, right? And I'm going to just keep throwing hundreds of thousands of dollars to this startup, and it's going to be great. Meanwhile, the other person has no idea just how much money they've promised or invested or done whatever in this other thing. And of course, as you would imagine, I don't know what the statistics exactly are, but they're probably 99.99999 fail, right? And so a lot of that money is gone. So that's one thing. Another thing you see a lot is people who do like day trading. So when you're trying to beat the market with margins and options and calls and puts right now, I have an MBA in finance, and that's even complicated to me. And I know what I'm doing, and I won't touch it. That's only for really highly trained professionals. But what happens in those kinds of situations, what people don't realize is that those losses are accruing in an investment account. So they might not be visible to the other spouse. They're not sitting on some credit card or getting drawn out of some checking account. These are losses that are accruing that are going to come to be called by this brokerage house. And this person has to come up with $80,000. And that's, boy, an ugly surprise. But the most most common one that I see is gambling. And that's my soapbox issue. I'm a big sports fan. I'm a big baseball fan. And I am so sick and tired of everything being sponsored by FanDuel and DraftKings. And I'm just trying to watch a baseball game. I'm a big Chicago Cubs fan. And then some little cron scrolls across the bottom, odds of Kyle Tucker hitting home run 1 in 600. Place your bet now. And you're like, we're in an addict nation. When we think of addicts, we always think of like the drug addict in the alley. And we're like, oh, that degenerate. No, there's a lot of addicts out there who are addicted to the dopamine, the gambling, the risk. And these folks are just, they got the app on the phone and they're just amassing debt, or they're doing the online poker, or they're doing the betting on the sports, and they're just dissipating assets left, right, and center. And when we think about financial abuse, sometimes we think of someone being like overtly abusive, withholding money, using money as a weapon. But guess what? Financial abuse takes a lot of forms. And one of them is spending our money on nonsense like this. And so you're bankrolling your bookie from your kid's college fund. And it's really just one of those things that makes me so mad, and how we don't have financial literacy in this country, not part of our high school curriculum when it really should be, right? Because a lot of us have credit cards and bank accounts and 401ks that we should really know how to work. And that's another soapbox issue for another podcast, Lori.
Oh, yeah.
But that's it, right? So that's when I think about financial abuse. Don't only think of it as like the obvious stuff. Think of it as all the other stuff that person has done. They bought a car without you knowing, and they spent $80, $90, $100,000 on some SUV, and they park it at their friend's house. That's a form of financial abuse as well that might not come to mind as very obvious, but is one I commonly see.
And then the other side of the coin is where you have the deadbeat who is basically just draining money all the time. They're either never working, they're getting arrested on DUIs, 20,000 here, 20,000 there. And you've got a breadwinner that is just stressed to the max all the time. And that I can see coming out in a difficult way in mediation, because you often can have a more aggressive partner and a more passive individual at that table. How do you balance that when you notice that you have a couple divorcing that you're meeting with, and one is like, okay, I've made all the decisions, this is what we're going to do. The other one's like, yeah, okay, that's fine.
That's a great question. One of the things, when you're a numbers person, you like structure, you like process, you like spreadsheets, right? I love all this stuff. This is what I eat, sleep, and breathe. And over the many years, we've developed such a structured process we take clients through. And sometimes they push back on it, because sometimes someone in this kind of a position is thinking they can use mediation as a way to get around the legal system and pull one over on somebody. And what they don't realize is that somebody like me with a financial background, I live for this stuff. I love digging into numbers. I love asking pointed questions, because not only do I want to help my clients, but I'm genuinely interested. I always wonder, like, well, what did you spend money on? How on earth is your car payment this? Or like, you don't want to come across as sounding like obnoxious, but you're like, so how did you spend money on this? Like, what part of you thought this was a good idea?
So is there a perception of some people who come to you that mediation will be less invasive for them?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. They think so. Like I said, I'm not an attorney by trade. I am a mediator. I am a professional mediator, master's, finance, all that good stuff. But they think, well, this guy's not a lawyer. He doesn't know the law. He's going to, we'll just walk right over this guy. And what I like to remind people is that, look, I don't require you to have an attorney in mediation with me, but you always reserve the right to have a lawyer review your agreement. And if I see something that's a little hinky, I'm going to require you to do that until I formally release it, because that's my name on there too. I don't want this showing up in front of some judge going, who's this crazy person who let this thing go? Because I'm definitely getting a letter. I'm getting a letter from the judge or the bar association. Even though I'm not a member of the bar, I'm still going to get a letter, because they're like, well, your client couple engaged in the legal system, and you, mediator Joe, let this happen. And thankfully, I don't let that happen. And so what winds up happening is folks think that they're going to pull that over. And I say, look, I go through this whole process. I'm digging through all of it. I have a thorough discovery process. The number one thing, the one mistake that client can make with me is say the following. You ready? It sounds so innocuous, but it's such a red flag. Why do you need a copy of that? As soon as I hear that, that's when my alarm bells go off. I get the flag, I put it on the pole, I hoist the red flag to the top of the pole, and I say, why do I need a copy of that? And I sound like my parents, because I said so. And then if you get some pushback, that's when you're like, well, let me just tell you a little story about what a forensic accountant does, what a lawyer does, what a judge will do, and how good you will look in an orange jumpsuit. Let's talk about this, right? And so I think they kind of tend to, posturing gets a little deflated when they have someone push back because, as you mentioned, in cases where there is financial abuse, one party's the stronger of the two and the other one's not pushing back. Like I said, just because I'm not a lawyer or just because I'm not representing one party, I'm actually advocating for both. And if I see someone being taken advantage of, who's at a disadvantage, who may be financially illiterate, you're darn right, I'm the playground bully that you're going to bring to the fight. Even though I'm not a lawyer, I'm just trying to explain, hey, listen, this is what we need. This is how this works. You can let the courts figure this out. I promise you, you will be far angrier and extremely unhappy if you go that route. So let's work it out here.
Well, financial literacy is definitely hitting the nail on the head. And what there really is very little of is prevention. And prevention comes with financial literacy. And I really like one of the things that you offer, aside from yours and your wife's services in terms of mediation directly, is that you also offer digital courses that will hopefully, I see, bring some prevention, bring some clarity and some direction before you even think of, should I hire an attorney? Should I hire a mediator? What are these courses and how long does each course run?
We have a couple of courses. So we have 4. One of them is free. It's about what is divorce mediation, right? It just kind of talks through mediation and the high level topics. But of our 3 paid courses, you can kind of take it to whatever degree you want. So the first one is what we call like our financial preparation kit. And so that helps you really wrap your brain around not only the tactical steps to prepare. So the checklists, we have our proprietary budget workbooks. We're going to have you plan, show you what your marital spending look like. We're going to teach you how to put together a budget for moving forward. Because remember, you're going to be a separate financial entity once you're divorced. And whatever income or support you receive, that's going to be what you use in order to pay your bills. You can't call up the other person and say, hey, I'm short this month. I need another $500. That's not how this works. Divorce severs that relationship. So we have our financial preparation kit that helps you do that. Plus, it contains our balance sheet. So that's a way of helping you really gather all the information on what you own and what you owe, especially debt, because debt is like one of those things that's pretty insidious that sometimes you ignore. As long as the credit card bill, like I said, you can get online statements. Sometimes the bills don't even show up in the mail. So that becomes quite a challenge. Now, that's one way. Then we have a planning for divorce course that expands on that. And it also goes into the emotional aspects of divorce, caring for yourself, telling your kids, caring for your kids through the process, explaining to you all the big buckets, as we call them, parenting, child support, alimony, property division, how all this stuff works. So educating you, like we say, an educated client is a good client. We want people to understand that, look, there are trained professionals like myself, been doing this a very long time. You use us to help you work through the process. But that doesn't mean you can't at least get a little knowledge beforehand. You don't want to go do it yourself. I say that to people. Even the simplest cases can sometimes derail. So you work with a professional, you help get through that process. And so use that as education. Now, the third course we have is a how to negotiate a divorce course. And this to me is the most powerful. This is my favorite one, is that it's teaching you the actual negotiation tactics that professionals like myself use to get what they want. Because there's a lot of psychology, there's a lot of technique, there's a lot of preparation that has to go into this. It's a lot of how you phrase things, how you say things. Because there's a colleague of mine, I love the phrase he uses when he talks about negotiation, he calls it soft power. And I'm like, that's a great way to put it, because it's not, I'm screaming at you, this is what you're going to get, or I am entitled to that. It's going in calm, going in organized, going in with what you know you are willing to give in order to get what you want and basically move forward. And so that is another course. The financial prep, that's something you can do in a Saturday afternoon. That's sort of take an afternoon, take a weekend, do it. The planning for divorce course, that's going to take you a little longer to get through. We tell people try not to rush through it. So if you do like one module a week, you might maybe do it over the course of 4 to 6 weeks. And negotiation, I would say the same thing. You want to spend at least 4 to 6 weeks absorbing the lessons, doing it. Of course, you can sit down and do it all in a couple of days, but it's hours and hours and hours of material and workbooks and handouts and exercises so that you can really hone your skills and practice those techniques, because really communication is the most powerful weapon someone has in a high conflict situation. How they communicate is It's like oxygen and fire. If you take the oxygen out of the room, the fire is going to dissipate. And learning how to do that is a skill unto itself. So definitely check those courses out. They're on our website. They're equitablemediation.com. And there's a little thing, courses and kits. Just click on the link in our learning center and you'll see them all there.
Well, I know we couldn't talk your wife onto coming onto the show with you, but can you explain what a divorce coach is and what a divorce coach does?
When I work with people, I'm always working one-on-two. So I'm always working simultaneously with the client couple. I'm focused on financial matters, tactical matters, drafting agreements, those kinds of things. I'm a nice guy, but my job is to help you move forward. It's not to handle the emotional aspects of the divorce. And that's where a lot of folks really fall into a trap. They make their attorney their best friend, and they're bitching and moaning about how this person didn't pick up their jacket, or we never go to my family on Thanksgiving, and at an hourly rate of whatever an attorney charges, that's not the person you want to be talking to. So a divorce coach, like my wife, helps you work through those emotions, work through those feelings, also helps you kind of diffuse some of those tensions, work on strategies, and help you with some of this negotiation stuff. So when you get in session, you're not triggered. You don't fall back into the same pattern and trap because the person pushed your button and set you off and said, haha. So what she does is she works on strategy. She works on mantras, keeping you calm, helping you formulate your strategy for moving forward, helping you reconcile that stuff. And even folks who, for example, in situations where there is financial abuse, you'll have a stay-at-home party. And I want to be very clear to the listeners, men and women can fall prey to financial abuse. I want to be real clear about that.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Guys out there, don't be proud, guys. It happens to everybody, women, men. And so she helps them say, look, yeah, I deserve this. I want this. This is what I need. And helps them kind of work through that and stand up for themselves. So she's kind of like your cheerleader, an educated best friend, professional backgrounds in psychology, certified professional coach. So she handles all that emotional stuff, which really helps me. I will give her credit, really helps me because the parties typically can come into mediation with their tensions diffused because she's working one-on-one with them and they're ready to negotiate. And that really helps me kind of move them forward. So yeah, so we kind of work together as a team, kind of divide and conquer, if you will.
No one can push your buttons more than your partner. And to get a different perspective on how this behavior is manifesting against you and that you can control this during a mediation must make a huge difference to be able to just not let somebody push your buttons during something like that. How long does the average mediation last?
For us, because again, our process, the way we do it, probably somewhere between 10 to 14 weeks. We have a structured process where we meet with you up front, we formulate our strategy, we negotiate, we draft, we review. Then, of course, you're at the mercy of the courts because some court systems, there's no waiting period, like in New Jersey, whereas in California, there's a 6-month waiting period. Sometimes you file for divorce and then you have to wait 12 to 16 weeks for the court to even respond. So it really all depends on where you live. But the good news is the substantive part of your divorce is the negotiation and drafting. So if you can get through that in a matter of 2 to 3 months, then you're just sitting back and kind of waiting for the powers that be to let you know when you can come in or your divorce will be approved. And so we find litigated divorces probably 2 to 3 years. And not all of that is active. Think about when you're trying to schedule. If you've got 2 people and 1 mediator, it's a lot easier to schedule than 2 lawyers and 2 people. Now you've got 4 schedules that you need to coordinate.
Well, you also charge a flat rate, and that's a huge difference as well. I think the big scary divorce attorney world is, as you have mentioned earlier, it's an endless gravy train. It's basically clocking hours, and you have no idea what the final price tag of this is going to be at all. But yet with you, with mediation, I think you said that this is a flat rate. So you actually know what this is going to cost.
Yeah, exactly. So what we do is when we meet with client couples or prospective clients, I gather a lot of information. I share with them how our process works. We're explaining to them that in order for this to work, we're really counting on them. I can't do my job unless they're willing to be transparent, open, honest, and help them move forward. And so I go away after talking to them. I put together a couple of options. Now, we don't have the same flat fee for everyone. They're all customized, but based on the level of service you want from us. We can offer you a basic mediation. It's still a very thorough process. It'll get you through. We'll help you move to agreement on. We have another way where we'll help you not only resolve current issues, but future issues. We have a lot of proprietary techniques we've developed that will help them how to negotiate child support 7 years from now. Like all these things, we build our agreements out to cover things for now and the future. And then also, if they want to include Cheryl in the process, they can do that, right? Working with her is strictly voluntary because, some of our clients are real amicable, which is great. It's like, hey, no problem. Absolutely. We support you if you've got a therapist already or whatever it is. But what that does, Lori, is it says to them, I'm willing to put my reputation on the line to say, we can finish this and we can do this. And I'm counting on you guys to do it with me because like you said, it's endless. It's open-ended. And I want to move you to agreement. I don't want to rush you to agreement, but I want us all to be focused on the end game, not arguing over who's right and who's wrong, but what can we both spouses agree on to move this forward. So my goal is always move forward, move forward, move forward. You've told me you want a divorce. You want to end your marriage. Let me help you do that, right? And so the flat fee is our way of saying to clients, listen, we're so confident in our work and so confident in our process. As you know, we have a 98% case resolution rate. It sounds like we know what we're doing. We lose one client every 2 to 3 years. They just, for whatever reason, refuse to reach agreement. And oftentimes it's because of financial impropriety. It's a tax return that wasn't filed, which because they owe $300,000, or another family in another country, or a bank account, or this startup business someone has drained their own 401k and put the money into that no one knew about. Those are the things that blow up. They're not because we can't help you to come to agreement. It's just because, well, I didn't see that coming. So that really helps. I think it helps also alleviate the pressure for the client knowing that the meter's not running and now they can focus on reaching agreement rather than, oh crap, how much is this going to cost me?
Well, it's a lifesaver because if you're on a limited or fixed income as an individual or a couple, you can't afford surprises. And you can get some pretty seriously, as you've been saying during this whole interview, the surprises, the financial surprises that could happen, either debt that came into the marriage that you may not have been aware of. They had defaulted loans, they had defaulted this, they have defaulted that. It may not hit you until you get deep into the relationship or getting into a divorce. So I would think that's a lifesaver to at least know your attorney isn't going to take you to the cleaners if you're not going to need to go that direction, if you can go into a mediation, which actually leads to my next question. What is your advice for somebody who is considering divorce? They're not sure they should hire an attorney or they should secure a mediator.
So I'd always say start with mediation first. Talk to mediators and be transparent, be honest with them. I always say to our prospective clients, I say, look, I want you to get the best result in your unique situation, even if that means not working with me. I do you no good. If I say, yeah, sure, we can help. And then 3 months, 6 months later, whatever, you're still nowhere. You spent money with me. Now you got to go off to the lawyers. A good mediator is going to be able to ask those questions and get a feel. It's a lot of gut. It's a lot of instinct. And that comes from, in my case, mediating for 28 years, you have a really good read on people. And so being able to know, okay, I can help these people, or I don't think I want to help these people. And I will tell them sometimes right at the end of our initial meeting when we first just meet, I'll say, hey guys, you know what? I don't think mediation is a good fit. Or at least if you think it is, we aren't a good fit for the two of you. We're not going to offer to put our hat in the ring here and offer you a proposal. But the good thing about mediation is it's not legally binding until you say it is. So we don't have you sign anything. It becomes binding after mediation is over. And so what we do is we say, look, when it comes to mediation, you can always try it. If it doesn't work out, no problem. You can always escalate to attorneys. And the worst thing that happened, even if you didn't come to a full agreement in mediation, is you still saved a lot of time and money because you were able to agree on some things in mediation. And then you don't blow the whole thing up. You bring that to your attorneys and say, look, here's everything we've agreed on. Let's just focus on this handful of issues. So it can still save you money. It can still save you time. So my goal, I always say, what have you got to lose? Nothing. You have a good shot at coming to agreement. Give it a shot and see what happens. You can always escalate to the next party, which is an attorney.
And you always want any battle or war to have minimal collateral damage or damage to the individuals.
Yeah, of course.
So it seems like that would also be kind of an incentive too. If you use a mediator, kind of need to agree on some stuff.
Well, you don't have to agree on anything outside of session. The only thing you have to agree on is that you're going to engage in a good faith negotiation. You're not just going to be difficult and dig in and say the opposite of whatever the other party wants. Yeah. That's really what you have to be willing to know, that I have to give in order to get. I have to behave myself. I have to disclose finances, right? I have to be willing to not say, why do you need a copy of that?
Yeah. Well, what is your advice also for someone who has had very little financial control in a partnership and really doesn't have a lot of financial understanding, but is agreed to use a mediator? How should someone like that prepare? Now, obviously, the best thing is take your courses, which certainly I would highly recommend. But if they're maybe thrust into the situation rather suddenly, and that could happen where you've got one partner that goes, you know what, marriage over, and I want to just mediate and be out. How does somebody who doesn't have a lot of financial understanding prepare for something like this?
Two things. I'm a big fan, as I mentioned, right? My background's finance, but I still don't do my own taxes. God help you if you do. Unless you're really simple, I'm not a fan of the TurboTax and all of that stuff. There are people, certified professional accountants, who spend their lives studying these things and keeping up on the changes. So I would say the best advice I could give someone is build your team. And that team will include a financial advisor and a CPA. And so offer to take them to lunch, offer to go to coffee.
Oh, great idea.
Buy an hour of their time. A lot of times they just want free information. And it's like, well, listen, these folks have spent their life studying this and working, and this is their job, and this is how they earn a living. So you could offer to pay an attorney. Listen, I'd like to buy an hour of your time for a CPA, for example. I'd like to spend an hour, and I'd like to pepper you with questions, and I'd like to gain a financial understanding. Financial advisors, right? A lot of people, they don't understand that even if you've got a small amount of savings, having someone help you grow that over time is going to be really important. And so you reach out to a brokerage house, usually like you can find younger professionals who are newer in their career, who are more willing to talk to you, give you a bit of an education. And then when your settlement happens, you have something that perhaps you walk away with 50,000 or 250 or 10,000. At least you'll have a professional who can help you turn that 10 into 20 into 30 and 40. And part of their process will be to talk to you about the budget, to talk to you about how to put this stuff together and be able to grow it. So they can also give you an education. So an accountant, a financial professional, those two folks can really help you out. And then from there, at least you'll have an understanding of where your knowledge gaps are, and you can then go fill those blanks in.
I am thrilled to have had you on the show today. I think this has been a terrific conversation. I would love to get Cheryl on the show sometime. Maybe we can talk her into it, maybe early next year to come on. I would love her to come on. I think divorce coaching is a really interesting topic. It's an interesting career, and it can certainly make a big difference to somebody who's going into a situation of divorce and they have been under domestic violence and they need some confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will do my best. No promises, Lori, but I will try. She's our behind the scenes person. So
can you tell the audience where they can find you and what the links are?
Yeah, certainly. So you can find us at equitablemediation.com. So that's our website, just like our company name. Be sure to spell it mediation, not meditation. A lot of times people do mistype it in. So equitablemediation.com. And on there, you'll find all sorts of information about us. We practice in 6 states here in the U.S. So Washington, California, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. So if you're in one of those 6 states, you can book a free info call with the aforementioned very shy Cheryl. And free info call, spend 15 minutes with you, understanding if mediation is a possibility for you. Then if it sounds like it is, you and your spouse can book a meeting with me, decide if you want to work with us. But if nothing else, go to the website, click on the button that says Learning Center. That's where you're going to find hundreds of blog posts, podcasts, videos, these courses, all organized by categories. So you guys will see all that. Just like I said, get educated, get some knowledge, because knowledge is power. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to be able to do it yourself, but you just need enough information to be able to ask the intelligent questions.
Absolutely. Excellent. I hope you come back. And thanks again, Joe. And you've been listening to Speaking Out on Financial Abuse.
Thank you, Lori.